It's a special Sunday edition of PFT OT, Labor Day weekend style, but the NFL never takes a weekend off, especially not with the season approaching. Used to be the NFL got started on Labor Day weekend. Now it's just a few days after the last unofficial weekend of summer that we'll have the Texans and the Chiefs get together. And let's start with a guy who was once the first overall pick of the Houston Texans. Jadeveon Clowney traded last year on Labor Day weekend to the Seahawks at the time when he was subject to the franchise tag, hadn't shown up for anything, hadn't signed the tender. Next thing you know, the Texans kick in $7 million to get a deal done. He goes to Seattle. Macy's in the background, by the way. He goes to Seattle. He spends a year there, and then he spends 6 months almost on the open market, finally agreeing to terms with the Tennessee Titans. Now, it was an interesting Saturday night because even though there was a report that the deal was done with Tennessee, the deal wasn't done with Tennessee. And there were efforts made by teams like the Saints and the Seahawks to get back into it and to get Clowney to choose them over Tennessee. At the end of the day, though, he decided to reunite with Mike Vrabel, who was the defensive coordinator in Houston before becoming the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. And that relationship presumably went a long way to get Clowney to take an offer reportedly worth up to $15 million, which means the base value is less than that. We don't know how much less. I had heard last night that the talk was in the range of $12 million. What does he have to do to earn the difference? And the reality is he went for months taking the position he would not accept $15 million from anyone. With the season approaching, with his agent Bus Cook terminated, now Clowney gets the deal done to become a member of the Titans. And the thing about Clowney, don't look at the 3.5 sacks last year. Look at the film. Look at the disruption, the F up the play ability, as Chris Sims calls it, although he'd love to say something other than F up the play. That's what Clowney does. He's a disruptive force. Other guys get the tackles, the sacks, the fumbles, the interceptions. It's Clowney who can blow a gaping hole in an offensive line and destroy a game plan, and that's what the Titans will be counting on him to do as they try to build on a season that unexpectedly landed them in the AFC Championship. And maybe with a guy like Clowney, if he's healthy, maybe that's the difference if they get together with the Chiefs again in the postseason. And remember, last year the Titans had a 10-point lead twice in the first half. First, they got to get back to the playoffs. Clowney will help them make that happen in a very crowded and competitive AFC South. On Saturday, a contract that we had been expecting for weeks, Deshaun Watson agreeing to terms with the Texans on his second deal before he was ever in a position where he was going to take any hits, potentially get injured. The injury risk shifts to the Texans with a 4-year extension on top of the 2 years that Watson had left on his first-round rookie contract from 2017. He gets paid a lot of money. To compare his contract year by year through the first 4 seasons with the Patrick Mahomes deal, whether it's signing bonus, whether it's money guaranteed for skill, injury, and cap at signing, cash flow year 1, 2, 3, 4, all metrics better than the Patrick Mahomes deal. And after 4 years, Watson will be under contract for 2 more seasons. 8 more seasons. Here's the reality. And focusing on, as the agents presumably did, doing a deal that compared very favorably to Patrick Mahomes, there's some other quarterback contracts that you could look at and say, those deals may be better. Those quarterbacks got more fully guaranteed money at signing. Those quarterbacks have better cash flow through 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, 4 years. One name right off the top of the head, Ryan Tannehill, who has $118 million over 4 years with his 4-year deal with the Titans. Deshaun Watson will make $110 million over the next 4 years. Which guy would you rather have over the next 4 years? All due respect to Ryan Tannehill, I doubt that anyone would say, give me Tannehill over Watson. And yet Tannehill, over the next 4 seasons, will make $8 million more than Watson. And after those 4 seasons, Tannehill will be a free agent again. Watson will be under contract for 2 more years. So, and there are other contracts as well that will compare favorably both to Watson and Mahomes. Watson compares favorably to Mahomes. The reality is the Mahomes deal in the early years is so bad, all due respect, it doesn't take much to compare favorably to the first few years of the Patrick Mahomes contract. But the good news is Watson was able to avoid getting crammed into that same pigeonhole of a long-term, ultra long-term, ridiculous long-term contract like the deal that Mahomes signed with the Chiefs. That's going to be a battle for more quarterbacks to fight as they try to get their contracts. Dak Prescott coming up soon. Others will be following suit, like Kyler Murray eventually, Lamar Jackson after this season when he's eligible for a second deal. It's always better to take a shorter-term contract and have flexibility than to lock yourself in for a dozen years like Patrick Mahomes did. Now, I understand why he did it. I get it. It's his right to do it. But when we look across the board at all quarterback contracts and compare them, some are going to be better than others. And the quarterbacks who commit for 12 years are going to be in a tough spot to be able to say, I got the best of the contracts. Watson's deal, better than Mahomes. The reality, there are other deals out there, better than both. And it makes you wonder how long until the players realize it and how long until the market gets to a point where both Watson and Mahomes will say, I think it's time to redo those deals because maybe they weren't as good as they ultimately could have been. Adrian Peterson, cut abruptly by the Washington football team late last week, quickly finds a new home with the Detroit Lions, a one-year deal with a veteran minimum salary worth, I'm told, up to $2.3 million based upon yards and touchdowns. And on the surface, the Lions have a crowded house in the backfield. They've got Kerryon Johnson, second rounder in 2018, DeAndre Swift, second rounder in 2020. Why would they need Adrian Peterson? Well, the reality is Johnson has missed 14 games in 2 seasons due to injury. 14 games, nearly half of his time with the team. He hasn't been able to play. And look, that's not a knock on Kerryon Johnson. It's a tough, demanding position. And Adrian Peterson has proven since 2007, far more often than not, he can line up and go. DeAndre Swift had an injury that knocked him out for a lot of camp and it called into question his availability for the month of September. So Peterson gives them a guy who can fill in for Swift while Swift is getting healthy, and also a hedge against the possibility that Johnson will get injured again. And the end result is, wherever Adrian Peterson goes, except New Orleans because it didn't work out there because they didn't want to use him the way he wanted to be used, he's gotten opportunities. And it feels like he's going to get opportunities with the Lions. And wouldn't it be something if he passes Barry Sanders on the all-time rushing list while playing for the Detroit Lions? Oh, and by the way, he'll get to play in Minnesota again this year. He'll play the Vikings twice. I'm sure that he was attracted to that possibility. I'm told 2 other teams were interested in Adrian Peterson, but they wanted to wait until after week 1. One of those teams, by the way, plays early in week 1 and possibly wears helmets that are painted red. Other than that, I'm not going to say anything more about it. A couple of other things to address before we wrap this up. The Buffalo Bills working out a new contract with cornerback Tre'Davious White. Remember when he was thinking about opting out? You'll wonder what was said and done behind the scenes to get him to commit to playing, and you'll wonder how much of the seeds of the contract that was announced yesterday were planted back in late July, early August, as White was deciding whether or not to play. And look, it's perfectly legitimate for a player to use the possibility of opting out as a tool to get what he deserves. White wanted his second contract. He's gotten his second contract before the season begins, and it's a good deal for him. It's a good deal for the Bills. He's a great young defensive back. We haven't seen all the details yet of the Tre'Davious White deal, but the bottom line is he signed it. He's happy. The team's happy, and now the Bills go forward with a key piece of their defense in place for years to come. The LA Chargers have had Keenan Allen under contract for multiple years, and they will have him under contract for multiple years still to come. Third contract for Keenan Allen, reportedly the second highest paid receiver in the NFL. Now, we know the devil's always in the details with deals like this. We'll get into the nooks and crannies when the full numbers become available and see where Keenan Allen really fits in the overall receiver salary hierarchy. But if he truly is the second highest paid receiver in the NFL, there may be some other receivers who look at that and say, pay me, possibly with a profanity thrown in on the front end like they did in the movie Goodfellas. But the reality is Keenan Allen, been around for a while, not currently one of the upper echelon receivers in the NFL, and I know he probably would take exception to that. But look, every receiver worth his salt should take exception to that. The reality is there can only be so many of the best receivers in the NFL, and most people would say Allen currently isn't in that group. If he's being paid like he's in that group, it's only going to make other guys want to get paid even more money than what they're already making. So a busy weekend in the NFL. We may have another edition of PFTOT by the time it's all said and done. Who knows what's going to happen Sunday? Who knows what's going to happen Monday? But what I do know is Thursday night, it will be the Texans and the Chiefs on NBC. And then just a few days after that, the full slate of Week 1 games, culminating in Sunday night with the Cowboys and the Rams getting together for the first game ever at the new stadium in Inglewood. That's it for now. We'll be talking to you soon. Check us out around the clock at ProFootballTalk.com.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.